Hey everyone, welcome to your Daily Detroit. The holiday week continues, and so do the podcasts. It's Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. I am Jer Stays. Joining me on the line to talk about, oh my gosh, like a bucket of Pistons stuff. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this, Fletcher Sharpe.
A lot has happened for this team after what it felt like a long time of nothing happening. It all kind of happened at once, but a lot of question marks got turned over for answers.
Do you think that maybe there's actually a fire under ownership with all this stuff happening, or, hand was forced, or what do you think before we get into this?
They kept saying Trajan Langdon had a plan. Like, he has a plan. And apparently it became time for him to start putting it into the public light, what his plans were. And you see that with the new coach. You see that with who they drafted. And you see that with who else they've picked up going into next season.
And we're going to run through all of it. First off, about that coach, J.B. Bickerstaff, formerly of the Cleveland Cavaliers. A very interesting little Detroit tie, of course, because the Cavaliers are owned by Dan Gilbert. That's why if you go to Rocket headquarters, and I have been there. I have been to the basketball court upstairs, which is all Cavaliers, which is very disorienting if you're a Detroit person, but you understand because he owns the team. But Bickerstaff to Detroit, what are your thoughts? Are you optimistic about this?
I mean, I think it's conditionally a good signing. He coached a little bit with the young Rockets team before. He ended up being let go by the Rockets because he really wanted to focus on defense, and Daryl Morey, who's an analytical nerd, and I mean that with love for people who do the same thing he does, but not for Daryl Morey, who's I value numbers, so we shoot more threes than twos because statistically it means you're going to win more if you make more of them, which, sure, whatever. He ended up in Cleveland, and they gave him 5 years to work with their young roster, and he ended up churning out a playoff team the last 2 years. They unfortunately, ran into some stuff, lost. Last year they were missing their star, and Donovan Mitchell. So he knows how to work with a young roster, which is great. My only issue is I wonder if fans would be willing to commit potentially 4 to 5 years to a coach to see it turn over. I do know Detroit has a bunch of young, talented players, but I'm not really sure. Also of note, I'd like to mention who followed Trajan from the Pelicans. Shooting coach Fred Vinson is an assistant. Fred Vinson has done some amazing work. Lonzo Ball, Najee Wright, Brandon Ingram, all were subpar, sub-30 three-point shooters. Lonzo Ball never shot higher than 32% in his career. Fred Vinson shows up. He's shooting at a 37% clip, which I know for some is it's only a few percentage. But that much, when you're shooting from that far away, when the buckets matter a bit more, is huge. And he's going to have his work cut out, just judging by who the Pistons drafted.
I don't know, man. I look at the Pistons and just basketball in general. These are not big squads, man. You're dealing with just a few starters. I feel like with the right money and effort, we're not going to have to wait 4 or 5 years. And with these moves, it to me, looks like a better team.
Kinda, yeah. Like you said, the teams are not big, so you don't really have artillery. It's in American football or soccer, it's we have a bench of X amount. It's no, you have a bench of maybe 9 people and you have 5 on the court. So if they're not getting it done and the bench isn't getting it done, you're just in for another long season. I don't think the Pistons will be as bad as they were last year. I'd like to assume they won't, because that's really bad. I don't think they're gonna all of a sudden jump to being a perennial playoff powerhouse. I think at the highest ceiling for them next year is maybe being a play-in team, maybe making it to the 8th, 9th spot, 10th spot, and getting a chance to maybe make the playoffs that way. But I don't see them outright qualifying for their own position.
Well, there was some excitement around those draft picks. The Pistons Performance Center is right around the corner from our studio at Techtown, and there was a line of TV trucks about these draft picks.
Yeah, shouts out to Bilal around the corner with the Pistons too. But yeah, the Pistons picked up in the 2024 NBA draft. They picked up Ron Holland with the 5th overall pick, and they picked up later Bobi Klintman, who spent some time at Wake Forest before going to play professionally in Australia. Ron Holland is a superiorly talented, physically gifted slashing guard / forward. He can get to the hoop and score in many different types of ways. Unfortunately, he played for the G League Ignite, which is a developmental team, and the G League, which for those who don't know is the NBA's developmental league. And G League Ignite is full of mainly, to be honest, pros who are a bit long in the tooth and kids who did not want to go to college and want to be the pro as quickly as possible. So it's a very weird roster that typically is not that great. So they put Ron in a position to like lead that team. And of course, going against other G League teams that are much better constructed, he tended to struggle at times. He only played 19 games as a result. He got hurt with a tendon in his finger, missed the rest of the season. But the tools are there. Super athletic, can get to the rim. His problem, if you watched his highlight, is all of his highlights were him going to the hoop, getting a steal, dunking, laying the ball up. Not one highlight of a jump shot. And there's a reason for that, because he's not a gifted shooter yet, which is where Fred Vinson comes into play, because they're going to work with him on that. It's a little bit worrying when they drafted someone like Ron Holland, especially when they have someone like Asar Thompson, who, again, physical freak, can get to the rim, can do what he needs to do, but his jump shot scares people. And not like in the way Steph Curry's jump shot scares people. But with Fred Vinson here, he's shown that he can take some people who don't shoot very well and turn them into competent shooters. I'm not going to say that they're going to be shooting 40%, 45%, but anything higher than 29% will take that. And they also add, again, Bobi Klintman, who is a pretty decent shooter for his size. He's a tall, rangy wing. Second round pick, he might not even make the team. But assuming that he is someone who has some professional experience, can shoot the ball a little bit, there's a chance he probably scoots in. If not, he then plays with the G League team for a little bit.
And Cade is coming back. That's something that you were a little bit skeptical of, honestly, earlier this year. But Cade is locked in.
I wasn't skeptical he would not come back right now. I was skeptical that, like, in 2 years, if this were to go on, he would then ask for a trade. He would be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, if they're going to they offered him $285 million. Like, who's going to turn that down? Like, that's more money than you know what to do with. Like, if they're going to give you that money, then they did it with Monty Williams last year. I don't think he wanted to come out of coaching where he did, but like, he was like, that much money, why not? So yeah, I figured Cade would come back. I just would be worried that after a year or two of this, he would then say, I'm done. But it's great because now you have your cornerstone. When the Pistons were great, when they had the 2004 team, they're like, we don't really have a superstar. Pistons fans knew that we had a superstar. Like, we had Chauncey, we had Ben, we had like a direct guy the ball can go to. But like in today's NBA, you need someone when the clock is running late. It's like, who's going to take the last shot of the game? And Kade Cunningham has done that with the Pistons. Even with the roster being constructed as it was last year, he was still decently effective. I'm not going to say that he was super effective and super efficient, but given that he had to have the ball on him, he could have had more turnovers than he did. His numbers weren't necessarily great, but they were good enough to like build off of. And if you give him some shooters and allow him some room to actually get to the paint and look for people, it's going to be a mismatch almost every night. So JB Bickerstaff can typically run stuff like that. I know, again, he's more defensive minded, but he finds ways to get some spacing for his young players. So, and again, with Fred Vinson working with people shooting, like, I think they might be a little bit better there. I'm not going to say they're going to be the best, but they will be a little bit better.
Yeah, and speaking of teams of old, Tobias is back.
Yeah, I'm not really thrilled about that. When he was here the first time, it was like, cool, they have some guy. Like, I can see why people like Tobias Harris, because before, when he came to the Pistons, they're like, well, we got to figure this guy out because he does all these things pretty well, but there's not one great thing that he does, but he's young enough to figure that out. And then he went away, and then he started playing in the big time with Philadelphia, and then I noticed that he did not figure that out at all. He still does a lot of things really well, but like nothing spectacularly. And you want to give that guy $26 million
$52 million
for 2 years.
Yeah, $52 million bucks over 2 years. I got to see something. Like, what's the charitable case for that? Because you seem down on him. What's the charitable case for 2 years, $52 million bucks?
Veteran leadership, someone who can give you a buck. He was average 17, I think 5 and 3. So like, he can do, again, he does everything fairly well, but nothing exceptionally well. Like, you can't say, Tobias, go hit me a game-winning 3-point shot. Tobias, go do this. But, like, he will get in there, and, like, there might be a game where he goes 5 of 6 from 3. Might be a game where he picks up 15 rebounds. Might be a game where he has 8 assists. Might be a game he scores 38 points. Also might be a game he scores 4, misses 15 shots, grabs 3 boards, and 7 turnovers. Like, they're both things are pretty high to happen, but having someone who has played in the playoffs a fair amount come back and provide some veteran leadership to this team, he's probably going to be a starter. Like, I can't imagine they brought him in.
Oh, there's no way. There's no way you pay somebody
to not start.
Yeah, no way you spend that much money on somebody and not start him.
So to have him in the lineup, I think, to provide some stability. Again, while he does a lot of things well, maybe nothing great, he's a better perimeter shooter than who they would probably be having starting in that position. So it's not the end of the world. They also, through trade, getting the Bobi Klintman pick, picked up Wendell Moore Jr. From the Timberwolves, who looked like he might have been a star coming out of Duke a few years ago. He's an all right rotational player. I think he probably makes the opening roster. I don't know if he's going to contribute much, but there's a piece there as well. So they have a fair amount of new faces. They also brought in Tim Hardaway Jr. And with that trade, said goodbye to Quentin Grimes, which I thought was going to be a nice 3-and-D type player, someone who could hit a few jump shots and also get in there. Tim Hardaway probably is going to come off the bench, but he's also shown to be a veteran this last season with the Mavericks getting to the NBA championship, who can hit a few shots. He had a few moments where he looked off Luka Doncic, which you probably shouldn't do. So you can expect a few moments where he thinks if he's really killing it, he's going to probably take a few extra jump shots. But you have two veterans coming in to provide some leadership, one of whom is a shooter to help space the floor a little bit. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, but like this roster, it's coming a bit together. Trajan Landing has a plan, but like I'm not going to sit here and say, all right, Pistons are back in the playoffs. Like I expect them to finish third or second in the division. No, like this, I'll even give him 7 seed. High ceiling, 7 to 8 seed, most likely probably falling just out of the lottery pick, but showing massive improvement. Like they're not going to lose 20-odd games in a row. That's not going to happen with this team.
It's not like we do so great with lottery picks anyway. You know, Fletcher, though, I got to say, what is then missing in this to say, if you're looking at this team and going, you know, basically like very tail of playoff contention, something along those lines, what is missing or what is Trajan needing to do or maybe we haven't seen yet to get it up a couple more spots?
I mean, it's development. You have a lot of young players. Unless you're going to cut bait and trade them for like more pieces to develop, which is really what happens when you're really stuck in the basement and looking for the light switch to get out of there. You end up kind of cutting bait in some of your young talent and sending them to other teams, and then unfortunately seeing them develop for other teams. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he just wasn't really figuring it out with the Pistons. They trade him away. He ends up on the Lakers. He wins a championship with LeBron. He leaves there to go to Denver and wins another championship there with another Piston they got rid of, and Bruce Brown. So it's like, it's great to see them develop eventually, but you like to see them develop under your own team. So you got to be patient. And it's stressing to the fans. Like, you have a young core, you have a potential superstar in Kade Cunningham. You got to be patient and like hope that the front office surrounds him with the things that he needs. And it's kind of obvious they need shooters. They need some rebounders. Jalen Duren is taking a huge step in his development. He just spent part of the summer with the USA select men's basketball team prepping for the Olympics. So like they only pick the best players they think will give the starters for the US Olympic team like a chance to feel some sort of pressure going into it. So if they select you and let you play there, it shows that like they think you are one of the next ones up. So if he can continue his development, maybe help with some help side defense instead of just being very big and getting rebounds, but actually maybe block a few more shots, like could be great for them. Again, I'm not going to sit here and be like the Pistons are definitely back, but no, I think games will be a lot more exciting, and I think people will expect to see a few more wins.
Yeah, you were mentioning about these changes, and if a team is looking to kind of hit the reset button or get out of the basement, who's out? Like right now, if you are them as a Piston, you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to be here, or they're going to get either shipped off or reevaluated. Who's on the bubble?
Isaiah Stewart. Everyone likes him. Everyone loves his toughness. But like as an undersized center, essentially, unless you're like Ben Wallace, who kind of like is the anti Tobias Harris, where like he does 2 or 3 things exceptionally world class well, and then the rest, like offense stuff, not great. But Ben could do all that as an undersized forward. Isaiah Stewart is not that. And while people love his grit and toughness, he's become a meme. I remember when LeBron elbowed him and he almost ran length of the court to try to fight LeBron, bleeding from his head. He looks like the odd person out because his development has really much like stagnated. I remember when they had Isaiah Stewart, they had Sadiq Bey, who was supposed to be the next one up as well. And Sadiq got traded out to Atlanta because it was kind of apparent that his growth was going to run counteracted to what the Pistons needed, and they thought we could maybe get some other picks for this person as well. And Sadiq has kind of flourished in Atlanta, not really. Like, he's hitting a wall there as well. So in a way, it was probably a good trade out or a good way to cut some bait. But I think Isaiah Stewart's probably on the bubble. I know some people want Jaden Ivey gone, which I don't think is very fair to him at all. Some people want Asar gone, and I don't understand that either. Like, he's very young, 19, 20, 21 years, still developing and learning how to be where he needs to be. So I think they probably need some time to cook in the oven. But yeah, I think Isaiah's probably needs to show that, like, he can still work around this project, because if not, like, he'd probably be the one that they're looking to for either picks or something.
Okay, before I let you go with all this change, what are you looking for as far as a good sign, either before the season starts or near the beginning of the season? We still got some ways to go, but what would be a positive sign for you with all these changes that fans could be like, hey, this is a step forward?
I mean, honestly, preseason, if they shoot better, and I like winning preseason games to me does not really matter. Like, of course you want to see your team win, especially if you're going to the games. But like, if they're shooting, like last year, they were one of the worst, if not the worst perimeter shooting team in the National Basketball Association. So if they can come out during preseason, not like make a step back 30-foot fade away, like not that, but like if they can knock down the easy shots, the open shots, and like pose some threat to where Cade feels more comfortable to kind of take over in the middle, then I will feel better. Even if they go into games and like they lose preseason games by 40 points, but if they shoot at like a 40%, 38% team from 3, 60, 65% from inside, cool. That's fine. We're okay with that because it shows that like the things they're trying to implement are working. But if they go out there and like win games but shoot like 20%, then I know like this is still needing to be worked on.
For sure. Fletcher Sharpe, I really appreciate you, man. I felt like there was just like news update after news update after news update when it came to the Pistons, and my head kind of spun a little bit, I'll be honest.
People were really on Trajan, like, we need to see some movement. They were like, just wait on it. He's got a plan. And then all of a sudden, it kind of just went from, waiting for the last domino to fall to like hoping they stop falling sometime soon to catch up.
Yeah, he cooked and dinner was served, apparently. All right, man, I appreciate it. Just so people know, we've got a happy hour Thursday, July 11th at the Royce that you're going to want to check out. I will put a link in the show notes. Also, we've got our listener survey going on, dailydetroit.com/survey. Want to hear from you. This is nothing without all of you. If we're not serving you, getting you what you need or what you want, why are we here? So it's important that you fill that out so we can have better content for you, find ways to fund the project, all that kind of good stuff. So always love hearing feedback. And as always, feedback, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Or, you could yell at Fletcher on social media if you want to.
I mean, as long as your survey response is not like, I want them to do a show in an icebox, then yeah, as long as it's not anything like that, I'd love to hear it. But if it's like, I want to see them, hang out with like electric eels, like, no, we're not fielding that one. I can assure you we won't.
With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.